You're live, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Sasha, our clerk, and welcome everyone to our special council meeting here for the Township of Clearview. It is Wednesday, April the 6th, 2022. This is a special council meeting held for the purposes of one agenda item. Basically, we have several items, but we have one topic, and that is to do with our small halls and the disposition of our small halls regarding the discussion we've had at length about the AODA compliance. That's the purpose of this special meeting at council, and so we will meet now with that in mind. I see we have some members of our staff available. Our CIO is here, and we have the resources to hopefully the council will have to be able to answer any questions available. So let's get started with the meeting. I'll begin with our land acknowledgement. I'd like to begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards and caretakers of the land. We acknowledge that Clearview Township is located within the boundaries of Treaty 18, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Titotonati, the Wendat, and is the home of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people as part of this intricate nationhood that reaches across Turtle Island. At this time of truth and reconciliation, we welcome the opportunity to work together towards a new understanding and new relationships and ask for guidance in all that we do. And I say this voluntarily as the mayor of the Township of Clearview. Council, our agenda is in front of us, so I'll ask for an approval of the agenda. Recommendation be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated April 6, 2022 as presented. Mover sector, Ms. Deneen, Mr. Broderick. Any questions on the agenda? I will call a motion. All those in favor?
I'm in favor. I don't have my cards.
Oh, okay, Tom, no problem. Tell you what, Tom, just use your hand and hold it up firm if you're voting in favor, and I'll look for it, okay? Thank you very much for that.
What?
All right, good.
In favor and no.
Well, no,
favor.
I would rather you vote like this, that way I can see it clearly on the screen, okay?
All right.
Thank you very much. All right, let's see here. Disclosure, pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Anybody got any disclosures for this meeting regarding this topic? All right, anything comes up during the meeting, please bring it forward and we'll deal with it at that time. Council, item number 3, community halls, accessibility renovations. Certainly something we have talked about at length, something we as council have been working with our volunteer boards and working through several administrations to deal with the AODA legislation that's been presented to the province of Ontario, and we as a creature of that need to follow that legislation. So as you all know, this has been a significant amount of work to get to this point. At this meeting, we have 5 recommendations as part of the presentation, and I would hope that we'll have some type of resolutions through this meeting that continue to move this project forward in the best interest of Clearview Township and the province of Ontario. So I'll tell you what, let's move to Terry Vachon. Terry, you've got a bit of a presentation. I think there's a handful of slides that you want to present to us. I'd offer that to give you the floor, as I've done before when we've had this discussion. So I'll let you take the floor, and you can take any questions from members as you make your presentation, and then you can toss it back to me as we go through the recommendations. Okay, Terry?
Yours.
All right, all yours, Terry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Council. Thank you for allowing me this evening and making this hopefully final, bigger kind of presentation to Council. As you all know, it's been a heck of a process. We started this process last year, and I feel very confident that we really worked through a real diligent process to assist Council in making the best decisions possible for this project. You're right, Your Worship, you had an excellent preamble there. I do have a quick 5 slides to show Council as well as the public of where we are today, and hopefully make big decisions on the final steps that's required for us as staff to move this project forward. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. Again, we're always hoping we'd be able to present this in person versus over Zoom. Sometimes it is a little challenging, but we'll do the best we can, Your Worship and Council. So I'll share this. Hopefully you guys all see it. Let me just move a little screen over. Can you see that, Your Worship? I could see you. You're good. Awesome. So I will begin the slideshow from the beginning. So again, the next 2 slides, I would just like to repeat the resolutions that were brought forward and approved by council at our most recent council meeting of March the 7th. I thought it would be prudent just to bring back those resolutions so it's fresh in council's mind. So the first one was, it was moved by Councillor Patterson and seconded by Councillor Leishman, that it be it resolved that council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive report PCR 02/2002 Community Halls Accessibility and Inclusion Report dated March the 7th. Number 2, that we received RJ Burnside Clearview Halls Renovation Report dated February 25th for information. And number 3, that council hereby schedule a special meeting, which is today, to finalize the direction and the next steps with staff as identified in report PCR 02/22 for all 6 community halls. And number 4, that council direct staff to implement the following staff recommendations from PCR 002-2002 report, 8 in total to choose from. So the first recommendation that council approved was that Clearview Township continue to own and insure all 7 community halls and repurpose them for the accessibility requirements as per the modified FADS standards included in the conceptual designs provided by RJ Burnside's 2022 report. And that renovations would also include any septic tank upgrades requirements and upgrade full kitchen fire code standards. And in red, your worship and council, was what council added to the recommendations, which is in accordance and in conjunction with the other recommendations as follows. Recommendation number 2 was that council approved, was that Clearview Township renew the existing operating agreements, the existing one for all 6 halls, into 7 separate agreements encompassing the existing autonomy of the board structure for a 10-year period. The new agreements would also include their operating and financial commitments, as well as fundraising shortfall arrangements, if required, and potential outcomes of lack of community interest, and bring back to council for review and approval. Part of that resolution also included recommendation number 3, that Clearview Township hire the services of RJ Burnside to complete the full engineering drawings to be prepared for tender or request for proposal / quotations for the public. Recommendation number 4, that Clearview Township cover the annual inspection and license fees for all 5 halls that are affected by installing a new LULA elevator. Recommendation number 5 that was approved, that Clearview Township renovate a minimum of 2 halls per year for all 6 halls as per the RJ Burnside 2022 report. Recommendation number 6, that Clearview Township, and again added by council, to negotiate a fundraising commitment from the halls of 10 to 20% of the total construction costs financed over 10 years. Recommendation number 7, that Clearview Township staff continue to aggressively source capital grants to assist in offsetting the total cost of accessibility renovations. And finally, recommendation number 8, which council approved option A, that Clearview Township direct the CAO and Human Resources Department to review internally if they have staff and with skills and expertise to oversee and represent the township's best interests for the 6 community halls accessibility construction projects, as well as any other Clearview Township capital construction projects that may arise over the next 3 years. Some examples were the new Lowell Public Works building, the Fire Hall building, Stainer Downtown Revitalization Phase 2. So moving forward, your worship and council, we have 5 steps that have been brought forward for council's direction and approval via recommendations. The first one is step 1, which is the details on renewing those operating MOUs with each hall. So part of the recommendation was to create individual 10-year operating MOUs for each hall, which would include the Station on the Green, as it was part of the original 7. So, so PCR, which is our Parks, Culture, and Rec staff, our comments are as follows. That staff will work with and negotiate the new MOUs with the hall boards. The order will be set by the order of that halls are being renovated over the next 2 per year. These MOUs will be brought back to council for approval. Council also needs to set a fixed amount, or should set a fixed amount of fundraising by each hall towards these AODA renovations. PCR staff comments is that a fixed amount should be provided to the hall boards. Example, a fixed 10%. They are aware of the range council has approved, which is 10 to 20%, but they will obviously prefer to choose the lowest amounts. So recommendation number 1 for council with respect to MOUs and fundraising commitment is as follows. Be it resolved that council of the Township of Clearview hereby, 1, direct staff to work with each hall to create a new individual memorandum of understanding outlining the operation of the facility, the hall, for a 10-year period, and each MOU being brought back to council for final approval. And 2, that a fundraising commitment for the AODA renovations for each hall board be set at a fixed amount of 10% of the final amount. Step 2, full tender or request for proposals, RFPs. Council needs to determine the procurement process for the hall renovations. PCR staff comments are as follows. That council should follow through with the engineers and architects creating the final stamp designs and procuring a municipal tendering process. Due to the amounts proposed and drawings completed, tenders would be the securest, safest process. So recommendation number 2 to council regarding project procurement methods is as follows. Be it resolved that council of the Township of Clearview hereby, 1, approves the tender process as a procurement method for the AODA Community Halls renovation project. And 2, that the engineers and architects' final stamp designs be used when tendering each hall renovation project. Step 3, final financing projects. At this time, I would like my colleague Kelly McDonald to come online and she can explain the finance staff comments.
Good evening, Council. So for the financing, what I'm proposing is we currently have the reserve that we're putting $250,000 a year into. The balance is just under 1.8 million at this point. So I'm suggesting we internally fund the first year's project, so the first 2 halls. And then when we have a better idea of what our total costing is going to be for the entire project, what we can do is take out an OILC construction loan, and we can then repay the reserve with the loan money and use the reserve money to fund the loan payments. I do have a schedule that I'll share with you at the end of Terry's presentation that just kind of gives you an idea of what kind of interest and loan payments we're looking at on an annual basis. Back to you, Terry.
Awesome, thank you, Kelly. So like Kelly said, so I'll just read through the financing project. So, so recommendation number 3, project financing. So be it resolved that council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the following 2-stage funding approach as recommended by the treasurer for the Community Halls AODA renovation construction project. Stage 1, utilize the existing hall renovation reserve to fund the first 2 hall renovations that are scheduled. And stage 2, for the subsequent hall renovations that are scheduled, a construction loan will be obtained through OILC for the project amounts. Let me just, step 4, renovating 2 halls per year. So council needs to determine which 2 halls gets renovated in 2022, 2023, and 2024. Pcr staff comments is that we recommend that Evening and Sunnydale halls be the 2 to be renovated in 2022. Both halls have existing predefined engineered designs in place that they have paid for via their fundraised funds. It will be quicker for our engineers and our architects to finalize these designs and tenders, as they're already approximately 60 to 80% completed. Both halls have also expressed their willingness to fully fundraise and also have part of their funds saved in their accounts to do so. In determining which 2 halls gets renovated in 2023, PCR staff proposes the Brentwood and the Duntroon halls. And then determining which 2 halls get renovated in 2024, PCR staff comments are that we propose the Dunedin and Nottawa halls for 2024. Dunedin Hall may require further septic investigations due to the proximity of the septic tank to the river. And Nottawa Hall has also expressed their unwillingness to fundraise at this time. Perhaps over the next 2-year period, they may change those decisions and may be willing to fundraise further if required. So recommendation number 4, hall renovation schedule. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approves the following schedule for AODA renovations for the community halls, based on renovating 2 halls per year. 2022, Evening Hall and Sunnydale Hall. 2023, Brentwood Hall and Duntroon Hall. 2024, Dunedin Hall and Nottawa Hall. Finally, step 5, determining the construction guidelines. 1, council needs to create construction MOUs with each hall board. PCR staff comments are as follows: that we should negotiate, create, and bring back to council for approval construction MOUs. These are different than the operating MOUs. The guidelines should outline specific roles of the township staff and its contractors, as well as each hall board during the construction period. If I can bring back to council's recollection, we had 2 very similar MOUs with the Village Green project in Creemore. With the Village Green, we had operating MOUs, and we also had a construction MOU over the life of the construction. So we're recommending something very similar to that process. 2, to offset expenses and revenues during the construction period. We anticipate at least 6 months to a year to complete these the construction of these halls. PCR staff comments are as follows: that Clearview Township operation budget cover 100% of the cost of the hydro, the heating, the water utilities, and any other miscellaneous operating expenses that the hall may have during the construction period only. And that Clearview Township not cover any lost revenues during the construction period, as those amounts are really an unknown factor at this time. And we also know that COVID has also had a negative impact on those revenues. So recommendation number 5, determination of the construction guidelines. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, direct staff to work with each hall board to create individual construction memorandums of understandings, outlining the specific roles of township staff, contractors, and the hall boards during the construction period, with each MOU being brought back to council for final approval. And 2, that during the construction period of each hall renovation project, that the township covers 100% of the operating expenses of the hall, which includes heat, hydro, water utilities, and miscellaneous operating expenses. And 3, and the township Clearview hereby will not cover any lost revenues during the construction period, such as facility bookings or revenues gained from the use of the hall or the property. So those are the 5 steps, Your Worship in Council. I've added a 6th here in case I've missed any. Definitely open to add any other steps if Council feels that staff may have missed. So other missed items could be added as a step 6. So with that, Your Worship, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. That's okay. I'm going to stop sharing. And with that, Your Worship, I can always bring back those screens and those recommendations as Council may choose. And I'm definitely here to answer any questions moving forward.
All right, Terry. Is there any member of Council with any questions to Terry, Kelly, CAO Ferguson, or anyone else in regards to this at this time before we go to the actual recommendations? Yes, Councillor McKechnie, good to see you again. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Terry. So the Nottawa Hall, the last I heard when I monitored one of the meetings, they said they were definitely not going to fundraise. They didn't care what the township did with the hall. They said they would manage the hall, but they were definitely not going to fundraise. Has their position changed at all?
Terry and/or Councillor Janine. Terry, go ahead first.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. So I haven't reached out, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor McKechnie. We haven't reached out to the Nottawa Hall since then to see if they've had a change of mind. I know Councillor Janine has, at one of our recent meetings, has expressed that she has had discussions with some of the hall board members. So I will ask Councillor Janine perhaps to add more to that discussion.
I was just going to turn to Councillor Janine. Nice to see you, Phyllis. Have you got anything to add to Councillor McKechnie's question?
Well, as you know, all I've had is COVID and closure with this. The hall board is more than willing to continue to manage the hall and do the usual small halls, and we're doing a festival this month, beer, wine, or craft beer, wine, and cider festival. It's going on the 23rd. I don't know where the financials stand on our hall. We've asked a couple of times to be updated. We've got to get together and discuss that. As far as actual fundraising for a build, I don't believe that they are interested in this time. At this time, we reached out to the community. The community did give us some feedback that would have to be discussed with the board as well, where they want to go from here. They will continue to run the hall status quo at this time. They do have some things in the works for fundraising, but they do not want to commit to doing a 10% at this time, is what I understand.
All right, thank you. Councillor McKechnie, is that comfortable?
Well, it's not comfortable. No, it's not comfortable, but thank you very much. And well, that's fine. As long as we know where they stand, because I think it's very important for the other hall boards to know where they stand as well. So as long as we know where Nottawa stands, that's fine. Thank you very much.
I think that's a fair statement, Councillor McKechnie. That's fair. Is there anybody else with any questions on that, on the presentation to Terry? I think I had Councillor Lamers with, sorry, Terry, did you want something else first?
Yes, sorry, Your Worship. I forgot. Kelly McDonald, Treasurer McDonald had mentioned that she had a slide that she wanted to share as well.
Oh,
regarding the financing, and I totally forgot about that.
okay, yeah, I know.
So
Kelly, turn your camera on and stay with us there, will you, Kelly? Come on. John Lamers, if you want to hold for a minute, we're going to go to Kelly McDonald first. Let her finish up her presentation. We'll come to your question.
Thank you.
I don't like to
Treasurer
interrupt. Thank you, Your Worship. I don't like to interrupt Terry's presentations because the slides are always pretty and mine are always, oh, look, numbers.
Oh, good. Okay.
But I will give you a quick share. Okay, so have you got my screen now?
Yep.
Perfect. All this is doing is giving you a brief outline of what the annual loan payments would look like on the total $5.6 million. Right now, if we took out the loan today, the interest rate is at 3.81%. And those are the numbers you'll see on the bottom. So with a 20-year loan, our current transfer to the reserve is short $160,000. If we take it out on a 30-year basis, then our current transfer is short $70,000. And I will forward this slide to all of council. I just didn't get a chance to before today's meeting. But here it is. The interest rates are going up. Was it the last one we took out was a County Road 42 water main and Stainer Library, and the rates were down at 2.5%. So there has been a substantial jump. I have absolutely no idea which way they're going.
All right, members of council, while you have that up, Kelly, is there any questions you have for Kelly on the data that's in front of you? Not hearing anybody or seeing anybody. Okay, Kelly, you said you were going to forward that to members of council. I think that's a good idea. Maybe file it with the clerk as well, and maybe Madam Clerk could just include it in the minutes of the meeting as well. Okay?
Absolutely, Your Worship.
All right, Kelly, don't you go away though. You know, we may ask you questions as we move ahead with this discussion here. Thank you. Councillor Lamers, I'll go to you next. Hi, John. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Bishop. Yeah, this question is for Kelly.
Oh, good.
There she's back.
Almost off the hook.
Yeah, when do we get the loan? Every year after we do 2 halls, or at the end, or?
Thank you. Through Your Worship to Councillor Lamers. The idea is for the first 2, we'll internally fund using the reserve funds. When we get to the final 2, then we'll do the loan for the entire project. We can do what's called a construction loan, where you take it out, you only pay interest on the portion you take out until you fully turn it to debenture. And that would be middle of 2023, potentially beginning of 2024. Hopefully when we have a good idea of the total amount of the loan that we're going to require.
Okay, so at the end of the project is when we finalize the loan.
Correct.
Okay, and to Terry, what's your timeline on the renovations for each hall?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Lamers, we feel confident, if I understand your question correctly, Councillor Lamers, we feel confident that we can renovate 2 per year. We feel confident that for 2022, if council agrees to move forward with Sunnydale Hall and the Evening Hall, having those designs, 75% complete, we feel confident that we'll be able to start construction this year, renovations this year. Hopefully finish those renovations at the beginning, Q1, Q2 of 2023, and work on the following 2 halls in the background. So we feel confident to start construction late spring, maybe early summer every year, and kind of take approximately 8 to 10 months to complete.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was wondering if it was going to be 6 weeks or 6 months, but you figure about 6 to 8 months per hall, or for 2 halls.
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Your Worship, if I can clarify, that's if everything works out according to plan. There are some items that can come up in the meanwhile that may have an impact on timing. For example, the RG Burnside have put in their report estimates, current estimates, but you actually don't really know the final price until the tender comes back. So if the tenders come back considerably higher than what was estimated, then I will have to come back to council and put that plan forward. So that may have an impact on timelines. We don't know. COVID obviously has an impact. So if everything goes according to plan, Councillor Lamers, those are the suggested timelines.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Lamers. I guess we'll move on. I see Councillor McKechnie, Walker, and then Leishman. So Doug, back to you again for another question.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just one quick one for Terry. I don't have it in front of me here. I know that we have to have these done by 2025, but when in 2025? Is it the end of the year that they have to be done by? Okay.
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure either. Go ahead, Terry.
Your Worship, to Councillor McKechnie, I don't think there's an actual fixed date. The government just put forward the year 2025. I don't think it's a really hard date, like a certain month. I think it's a little bit open at this point. I could do a bit more research to find out exactly when. I feel confident we should be able to have, again, if everything lines up, we should have them all completed by 2025.
Good question. I see the clerk has joined us. Doug, hang on a second. Madam Clerk, did you want to jump in on that too?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the rest of council. Terry's right. The province hasn't put a hard deadline in 2025, but I know just by doing accessibility reporting in a past life to the Accessibility Directorate, if you can show that you're making strides to move towards their deadlines, then they work with municipalities in that regard. So, okay,
Councillor McKechnie, I will take that exact question on behalf of you and all the members on this call to the minister responsible for accessibility, Mr. Cho. As it turns out, I actually have a meeting with him scheduled for Tuesday. So I will ask him that very question. We'll see if we get an answer for it. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for that. That was good. Councillor Walker, you're next. Go ahead, Robert. How are you?
Good, thank you, Your Worship. A couple questions to Terry. First of all, Terry, in step 5, we talked about 100% of the costs of heating, hydro, et cetera, that we will cover. What 100%? What costs do we cover already? I know we do cover some costs 100% already. Now, I think I just wrote down, and I might be wrong, but I think we cover all the insurance. We cover the snow plowing, the grass cutting. Do we cover the water system? The watering system in each of those halls? Do we look after all that as well?
Through Your Worship, yep, through Your Worship to Councillor Walker. Yes, we do. We cover the inspections that's done by our water department. And we also cover the cost of any upgrades or repairs to the system, to the water softening system. So yes, and you're absolutely right. Those are the 4 other items that we cover.
Okay, so we would just be adding to our costs then the hydro and basically the heating. Pretty well would be the only 2 additional costs, and that normally we would cover then in that process as far as the 100% coverage.
That is correct. Again, through you, Your Worship. I will be, when we sit down with each hall, the first 2 and doing the MOUs, we will get a good grasp if there's any other little miscellaneous items that we just haven't thought about. Maybe there's certain things I just don't know of at this point. I'm going to research that, but they're going to be very minimal.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Is there an out for the next coming council if the viability of some of these smaller halls shows that they will not survive over the next 2 or 3 years? And you know my take on this. I have had this concern before, and I expressed it, that I'm concerned of the viability of the smaller halls with volunteers, with rentals and financial obligations and commitments of survival. And I am wondering if there's nothing here. Is there an out for the next council that if one of these halls over the next couple of years shows that they aren't bringing in a lot of rentals, that they aren't being able to sustain themselves, is there an out for us or for a council then to say, we are not going to proceed with AODA and we might have to look at declaring surplus and getting rid of? I'm just throwing this question out for some comments.
Do you have somebody you want to ask that to? Or are you asking it to Terry, or are you just asking
Terry
me?
If there's an out?
Okay. Terry, do we have an exit clause or anything you're working on towards this in regards to the construction MOU or the agreement to MOU for AODA? Is there any exit in there?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, we don't have any exit clauses at this time. I would have to ask Clerk Helmke to perhaps assist with respect to the legalities around, council making a resolution, and then what happens if council changes their mind down the line. I would have to rely on her to provide him that feedback. But no, at this time, we don't have an exit clause. We're moving forward with the anticipation that all 6 halls will be renovated as per the AODA standards.
Okay. I see there are other staff here available, but Councillor Walker, I'd like to add that council did pass a resolution that said that we're going to renovate all 6 halls. And so we're going to make the decisions on how we do that. That's what we're kind of looking at here today as part of this agenda. The question as to whether any of the halls sustain themselves over the next 2, 4, 6 years, that's up to the individual volunteers and also the interest in the community of using of the hall. I would suggest to you that any future council can make decisions, in the disposition of any of our buildings, given good information and proper procedure. So they can make that decision, but I would suggest to you that this council is now making a decision to move ahead. But once we get to the tender process, which is being recommended in part of this, these recommendations, if the tender process is in fact chosen, that the rules around tendering and executing a tender come into play. That if council signs an agreement to do a project, that they'll complete it somehow or another with the tender process. So I think there's a lot of steps here. That's my take on it, Councillor Walker. But I do appreciate you bringing it up, because the reality is that this issue has been discussed by many previous administrations, of which you and I have, and perhaps Councillor Patterson, have sat on most of these and talked about this at length. So for sure, a future administration will also be dealing with these same questions. It's my hope that we're moving this in the right direction to allow the community to see that these halls are in fact getting renovated, and we're doing them cautiously and carefully as best we can. Does that help, Councillor Walker?
Yes, I understand. I realize we're still got a process to go through various levels at this point yet, but we're just inquiring about if something down the road changed about an opportunity, whether the next council or whoever could remove and move forward. But thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. Okay, I saw Councillor Leishman. Hello, Councillor Leishman.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi. Thank you, Your Worship. It's I just want to be clear. These are going to be separate RFPs for each hall. So we'll have a different contractor for each hall. Is that right?
Terry, I'll help you out. The process, of course, would be that we would go to tender, and we don't know who the contractor may be applying and taking out the documents. So from the process, we'll see who would be the contractor on each of the 6 individual halls. Terry, is that what you're proposing?
That's what we're proposing. That's correct, Your Worship. It may end up being the same contractor. The tenders will be separate for each hall, but one contractor may win both halls. If you follow what I'm saying, it'll be 2 separate contracts, 2 separate designs, 2 separate tenders, but it may in fact be the same contractor, or it may be different contractors.
Right. Okay. That's good. I'm just wondering if you could put, if Robert's right, if we could put an out on the construction MOU. Like each hall would have their own MOU anyway, right, for construction. So if you want to put an out in there, I would think that would be the one to put it in, not in the general MOU, because that's for the halls forever. But that's just a suggestion anyway.
Okay. If can I actually go to the CAO? Mr. Ferguson, you got a little bit of experience in these type of things as far as setting up an agreement and MOUs and so on. What would be your comment to support what Councillor Leishman's asking in regards to a construction MOU exit strategy?
Thank you, Your Worship, and Councillor Walker and Councillor Leishman asked a good question. You can put a sunset clause, so to speak, into agreements, and sometimes they can be mutually agreed, and sometimes it's a positive thing that people may want to move on from a project or they may want to do something else. You want to put some language in there that gives you that flexibility, but you want to respect the organization that's operating it at the same time. And often with a lot of these, it's really all your taxpayers. They're the shareholders basically of all our facilities, and you're the board of directors, I guess is the best way to say it. So an effort should always be made to keep the volunteer life cycle going as much as possible in communities. And often a community hall is that focal point. But if it fell down, let's say, for example, people moved out of the community or there was a complete lack of interest, then you could have a mutually agreed sunset clause in the agreement. And we could certainly look at putting that in, and something that gives us the ability, if we know that it's completely failing, that we might be able to refer to it as surplus property. But it would be as a last resort.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
All right, Councillor, are you comfortable? Thank you. All right. Thank you, Councillor Leishman. Thank you, CAO Ferguson. Mr. Broderick, I think I just saw your card. How are you, Councillor Broderick?
I'm good. Thank you, Your Worship.
Yes.
I'm just curious, so the other 5 halls are comfortable with the 10% fundraising figure? Terry?
Terry?
Thank you, Your Worship. They haven't, so 4 halls, when we went through the process, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Broderick, when we went through the process of making our presentations to the halls, we had back then had expressed that council was thinking at about a commitment of 25%. And so for 3 or 4 of the halls thought it might be manageable. They had a little bit of concerns, but they were also made aware that council would come back with a final amount. It was just an amount that was thrown to start discussions with them. We have not went back to the halls and asked them their opinions on the 10%. Now, I'm sure the ones that have said yes to 25 would be okay with the 10%. Obviously, it's less. But we have not went back to 2 or 3 of the halls that had expressed heartburn. They didn't say yes or no to the 25%. They said they would be willing to commit to an amount, other than Ottawa, of course. But they said they would be willing to commit at an amount, whichever amount council was going to bring back as a final amount. So it's a bit of a yes and no answer, Councillor Broderick. I wish I could give you more of an answer, but we have not went back. That would be part of the MOU process with them. We would go back and say, this is an amount that council is proposing. They'll obviously have their thoughts and opinions, and then we're going to bring those back to council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. Thank you, Terry. Anybody else with any questions or comments at this point? Yeah. Oh, Tom. Hi, Tom. Yeah. Go ahead, sir. If I miss you, just turn on your mic and say hello. Okay. I apologize for that.
I'll do that. Thank you. We made this, I see it as a strategic decision that we made to fund the halls. We could have built one big redplex and closed the halls, for example. That was one model. But we've decided to do it that way. And so these halls serve the people in the various communities within Clearview. So have we given serious thought to a public engagement process in this? We're getting the feedback through the hall boards specifically. And that's a good thing. They know their audience and that. But there's a number of voices that wonder why we're spending the money. I'm comfortable spending the money. I'm not signaling that I'm not. But I have heard some voices in the community saying there are better things to spend our money on. And does that prompt us as a council to want to go out and do a broader, and once we make the decisions tonight, then go out in some form of a public engagement process and explain the plan that we have? I think it's quite significant that what we're doing. we could have shut down a lot of these halls and worked on a bigger project. That certainly was the plan when I first joined. I think when you did as well, Mayor, that it looked like we were going to go the way of a recplex if we could afford it someday. Personally, I feel very comfortable with this style of community facility in Clearview. I think it's a signature for us of the way we treat the community. And because we do want to do that, should we involve them in this as we make these final decisions?
Councillor Patterson, I appreciate you bringing that up because, we have consistently had public participation on topic after topic after topic. And this COVID situation has made it extremely difficult to actually hold meetings, as you know, for public content and public input meetings, even town hall meetings that people are asking. So I agree with you completely. And I would encourage people to write to us at all times about their decisions or about their ideas. We have the public participation portal available during our regular portion council meetings, and it certainly is. And further, these 5 determinations that will come forward today will all still be subject to particularly the RFP process and the tender letting. Once we get to that point, I'm sure we'll hear lots more from the public because suddenly they'll hear that, we're going to spend $500,000 in Sunnydale, or we're going to spend $750,000 in Sunnydale, and $1 million in Ottawa, and so on. And so once they start to actually appreciate that and sort of digest that data, I believe we will hear more from the public. And that also, I also think we're going to hear more what you just said about how it is a signature for Clearview Township to have these unique facilities in our township. So, these decisions, back to what Councillor Walker was saying, the next council will certainly be dealing with this again, because I'm sure that some of these tenders, that will have to be dealt with by the next term of council for the next 2, perhaps. So this is certainly not over with right now as far as public participation or public input, and I would encourage it at any time. Terry, you did indicate you want to speak. Go ahead, Terry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just would like to kindly remind council that last year when we went through the brainstorming process, those brainstorming meetings, we brought up all those thought bubbles, and we as staff put on the table for council to consider the public engagement process. It was a long, lengthy discussion, and at that time, council chose to not do a public process. It was put on the table. There was a lot of discussions about that. It was a very contentious issue, but at that time, council chose not to. We brought that forward at that time because we didn't want it to stall this project moving forward. We wanted to know right off the bat if that should be an option or not. And again, council chose not to. I would really feel uncomfortable at this time re-engaging it with all the work that we've done. It would have been nice to know to do that before we start spending a lot of money on our engineers and architects to move this project forward. So with respect, Your Worship, as on behalf of our department, I think we already had that opportunity. I think we're in a process to start renovating these halls. Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly recall that lengthy discussion. And one of the points that I remember coming out of that, Tom, was that Councillor Patterson, was the point that we're dealing with the people who really are passionate about their halls, and they do represent their individual neighborhoods across our community. And so it is a good representation of the actual taxpayers that serve our community or that make up our community. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I'm sure there's always going to be people opposed to every decision we make. But in the end, we're at this point. Yes, Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Yeah, I had another question, but just to talk to Terry's point. Well, I'm not suggesting another period of sober second thought here. What I said was, once we approve tonight, we are moving forward. Okay, and I would think that it would. This is when we get into issues where we've been talking about something for years. everyone has just thought of 2 or 3 examples of that decision making, for example. And then we get stalled when people all of a sudden are woken with the fact that you made a decision and you didn't include the public. Well, we've been doing this all along the way. So I was just suggesting some way of saying we're moving forward, more than a press release, but at least explaining why we're doing this and putting it in a positive, in a supportive way, saying that we've done all this work. We've worked through what we consider public issues through the board and anyone that wanted to publicly participate with us, but just keeping them informed. I understand the concern, but when we make a decision tonight, we should stick with it and have some resolve that we made the right decision because it took us so long to do. But I have a quick question, a technical question for Terry.
Go ahead.
How are we structuring? I hear how we're structuring the tenders, but I actually thought if we did 2 together, and we're going to send it to the same list of certified contractors, and they're going to come back to us, and some of them, no doubt, are going to say, "Here's the price individually. Here's the price for both." Are we really going to? And there's some benefit to doing either way, I guess. But there's some consistency in having 2 of the halls built by the same contractor, the same quality and all that sort of thing. So I was just want to ask you a little bit more, because it sounds to me like we were going to leave it up to the contractors, to bid, and we'll have 2 separate contracts, and it could be the same contractor. Are we going to ask for bids to do both? Are there advantages to do that?
Yeah, perfect. Good question, Tom, because that's right. There are some cost savings that potentially are available for the project. Terry, any comment on that? And perhaps over to John right after you. Terry, go ahead first.
Sure, yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Councillor Patterson. I'm not aware of any advantages at this point, Councillor Patterson, but I'm somewhat aware of some disadvantages that we may have. The reason why we were recommending separate tenders for separate contractors is it may affect our timing. So one contractor may be able to do both, but they may not be able to be on both sites at the same time. So we're hoping to have 2 halls being renovated at the same time to meet our timelines of 2 halls per year over the next 3 years. So one contractor may say, yeah, we can do both, but we're going to do the first hall for the first 6 months or 8 months, and then we'll do the second hall for the next 6 to 8 months, and then it'll just extend our timelines. But if they're interested in providing a tender for both halls, then and meet those timelines that are expressed in those tenders, then they're going to be able to, if they can be at both locations at the same time, fantastic. And maybe at that time, we may see some savings because one contractor may put a bid for both tenders, and maybe they see some savings by doing one job, 2 contracts over one job. So we can only see some disadvantages at this point, but it's a very, very good question. Again, and I probably have to do a bit more research with our engineers just to make sure to validate what I'm saying.
Fair statement. Over to CIO Ferguson. John?
I believe Terry answered the question very well. If there's possible language we could put in the tender that might allow that to happen, we would look at it, but we would have to look at the pros and cons and what that would mean for the build timelines, for example. And then how would we interpret if somebody just bid on 1 as opposed to 2 and somebody bid on 2? We'd have to figure out how that process would work. So we can look at it, but it would require some specific language in the tender, and it might be a bit difficult.
Yeah, if I can ask both of you gentlemen, can you contact our engineering firm and see if they're comfortable creating a scoring system, perhaps, that helps with the tendering process? Once you receive a tender, you can score some of the values that are in the tender document that they use to help assist them giving a recommendation. I mean, generally the process would be that we receive tenders, they get opened, they then go to an engineer to be reviewed, and they get reviewed and they give their recommendation as an engineer as to what the winning bidder would be. And it may or may not always be the lowest bidder, which kind of has been the process of municipal governments and governments all over. Always go to the lowest bidder. But that's we have policies and procedures in place that allow us to have flexibility. So perhaps you guys could check on that before we actually get to a tender. Does that help? Gentlemen, nodding your heads. You're good?
There would definitely be a scoring process as a part of the official reviewing of any tender submission, and we'd have to be able to defend it, I guess, if somebody challenged us.
Okay, Councillor Patterson, is that comfortable with that answer? Yeah, thank you. Okay, very good. Did I see somebody else? I wasn't sure if there was another card there. Thought I saw something, but nope. All right, Terry, don't go away. We're going to go right into recommendations unless council has anything further. All right. So for the purposes of our clerk, I will read the recommendations, look for mover and seconder, and we will have debate, and then I'll call motions as we move along. So the council, these are 5 recommendations, and so we're going to look for individual movers and seconders each one. Council, recommendation number 1, in regards to the MOUs and fundraising commitment. Be it resolved, the Council of the Township of Clearview hereby 1, direct staff to work with each hall board to create a new individual memorandum of understanding outlining the operation of the facility, the hall, for a 10-year period, with each memorandum of understanding being brought back to council for final approval. And item 2, that the fundraising commitment for the AODA renovations for each hall board be set at a fixed amount of 10% of the final amount. So I'll look for a mover and seconder to put it on the floor. Madam Leishman, Councillor Leishman, Councillor Broderick, thank you very much. Council, any discussion on this item as presented? Mr. McKechnie first, then the Deputy Mayor. Go ahead, Doug. Oh, and then Tom.
Thank you, Your Worship. So again, looking at the recommendation and number 2 there, it just seems like the wording is a little bit weak to me. So I would like to propose an amendment, and that we put in a 3rd point there that basically says, and maybe the clerk will have to help me with the wording, but the AODA renovations will not proceed until the hall board makes the 10% fundraising commitment as proposed in item number 2. See that item number 2 right now, it just says that the fundraising commitment for the renovations is to be set at 10% of the final amount. But if the hall board says, well, we're not going to raise 10%, well, I mean, the council, like, we could still go ahead with the renovations. And what I'm saying is that we put an item number 3 in there, firmly stating that we will not go ahead with the renovations until we get that 10% commitment, fundraising commitment.
Okay. Procedurally, I'll ask, is there a seconder on the amendment? Once, twice. There is no seconder, Councillor McKechnie. So we'll park your recommendation or your additional amendment and appreciate your input. Any other question? Oh, sorry. Did you have anything further, Doug? I should say, I think you still have the floor, and then I'm going to go to the Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor Burton, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a bit of a struggle with item number 2 there, the fixed amount of 10%. First of all, we still don't even know what the total amounts are. So we don't know how realistic 10% is. I think the board should contribute to something, but we're throwing pie in the sky when we say, they have to commit to 10%. Because what if the 10%, if it's $1 million, it's 100,000. That's a lot of money to raise. What if it turns out to be 1.5 and now it's going to be 150,000? I think there's a struggle to put a fixed percent amount at this time. I think when we do our memorandum of understanding with them, we can get a better comfortable feeling of how much they think they can raise and contribute towards it. So to put it in there, so I don't know how we would change the wording. So each board be set to support I would say to support contributing towards the final amount rather than putting a fixed amount. I think each board should contribute towards it. I just have a hard time committing them to 10% because we don't know what the numbers are yet. And they don't know what how are we going to ask them to commit when they don't know what the numbers are either? I think we're jumping ahead of ourselves on that particular issue.
Okay. All right, I didn't hear a recommendation or amendment or anything, so I'm going to ask to go to Councillor Patterson next, and we'll keep your recommendation in front. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson. Yes, no, am I wrong? And I see Connie and I see Phyllis. Let me just hold everybody for a second. I'm making my notes here. I got Phyllis Deneen, I got Connie Leishman, and I did see the CAO, but I'm going to let Tom speak first, and I'll come to you, John. Go ahead, Councillor Patterson.
Yeah, just to the deputy mayor's point, I understand the concern, but we do know the estimates. And this is, we've gone through all those, and we have built in. Terry has built in a comeback if, in fact, the tenders are way out of line. But I think we should be giving a target, putting a worth on the efforts that we're putting in the halls, and I think a responsibility and obligation, which most of the boards seem to be willing to assume, to help build, renovate our halls. So I'm not in favor of changing the 10% now until there's a defined issue. I think it's a matter of having, and the boards have talked, from what I understand, I haven't talked to them all, but I think the boards are pretty well aware that they were going to be putting in a significant contribution. And Terry's right, it was as high as 25%. And I know several of the halls said, well, we can do that actually. It's a big bite, but we can do it. So 10%, I think, is a pretty modest start. My question would be, when we do the MOUs, all of them will be paying the same amount, or do we get into, Terry, is a question more for Terry. Are we, we're not anticipating having a varied amount of contribution, 5 for one, 15 for another. We're essentially starting off writing the MOU or negotiating the MOU at 10%, if that's the number. Is that correct?
Through your worship.
Okay, Terry, go ahead.
Yep. Sorry, your worship, through you to Councillor Patterson, that is correct. We have no intentions in providing a variable amount. Our intentions was to provide a fixed amount, same for all 6 halls.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, CIO Ferguson.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. This is a complicated piece of a potential negotiated agreement with a volunteer group. And the different volunteers that are involved with the different facilities are all at different capacities. And I think we've not been given instruction. Staff has not been given instruction on how to approach this or how to negotiate. And there's some things I think, in fairness, to treat the boards in the best light that we can. I want to raise some issues, but I would rather raise them in camera. Really, it's related to how we should be approaching this from a capital perspective and an operational perspective. And the reason I want to go in camera is I want to talk about the benefits of the boards operating these facilities. And the commitment to operating is far greater sometimes than the capital commitment. And because of that, I'd like to suggest something to council to give us instruction on, but I'd like to do that in camera on how we would negotiate with our hall boards and to treat them in the best light as possible, if council would be willing to entertain that.
Okay, council, I'm going to suggest that's advice from the CAO. So I would turn to my clerk. I'll halt debate at this time. Madam Clerk, would you be able to assist with us in regards to the CAO's recommendation to move to in camera?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. I I do have a resolution that I can state out to council if you would like to move from open session into closed session at this moment to discuss this item. If you would like, I can read out that motion to council.
All right. Okay, well, then that means I'm getting some good direction from the clerk. Members of council, I'm looking to have the clerk read this, and we'll have that discussion when we read that motion. So as the chair, I'm asking for the clerk to read the motion to go in camera at this time. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to the rest of council. So the motion before council to go into closed session, which is in accordance with section 239 of the Municipal Act. Be it resolved that council of the Township of Clearview now hold a meeting that is closed to the public pursuant to section 239 2K of the Municipal Act 2001 to discuss recommendation number 1, MOUs and fundraising commitment of the Community Halls Accessibility Renovations Next Steps presentation.
And if I may add, specifically to give staff instruction on what they're to negotiate.
So this has to do with the ability to negotiate or the direction to negotiate?
Yes.
I think that falls underneath 239-3 item K. Yes. Okay. You guys are getting me. Okay, members of council, you've heard the resolution. I'll look for a mover and seconder. Mr. Broderick and Ms. Steneen, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And are there any opposed? Okay, that's all in favor. We're going to move in camera. For the members of the public, council will resolve to a brief in-camera discussion. I hope it's a brief discussion with our CAO as per 239, and we will return. Thank you.